the top 10 countries with a large population that desires to start their own businesses. And that's according to the 2015 eNCA, which was launched this week. We now speak to the National Development Plan, or we do know, however, that the National Development Plan is hoping that entrepreneurs will play a role in meeting the jobs target by 2030, that is. So what is it that is driving the increase among South Africans to want to start their own businesses? Professor Boris Urban from WITS Business School to discuss this now joins me. Professor, question is clear, I suppose. What is driving South Africans to want to start their own businesses?
So I think there are a number of reasons, and as you mentioned, this was a survey in 44 countries with close to 50,000 respondents, and surprisingly that South Africa came second. And I think some of those reasons are push and pull factors. Insofar as pull factors, I would estimate that as a result of sometimes discontinuities in the economy, where there's confusion, where there's chaos, entrepreneurs thrive. So I think a lot of entrepreneurs now are basically seeing opportunities where others don't. There are gaps in the marketplace, but also push factors, unemployment, companies restructuring, retrenchment, creating a lot of opportunities for entrepreneurs.
Do you think, however, that the unemployment rate has led to a higher number of people also wanting to start their own jobs? I mean, we're sitting at around 25%. Very important for you to find your own way sometimes.
Absolutely, and I think that's one of the key drivers insofar as folks are sort of looking at an alternative to being an employee, especially if there aren't any jobs. So you have to do something out of necessity, and a lot of the time entrepreneurship is an avenue for that.
But what about red tape? I mean, that's always been an issue. Did you see that come out in this survey as well right now?
So yes, those sort of structural issues, the red tape, they always feature very high. But what's very interesting in this report is the attitudes, the perceptions. If people don't perceive that they want to start a business, if it's not desirable, then they won't start a business. And without that type of perception, that type of attitude, you don't have behavior and you don't have activity.
We've spoken to some analysts as well who reckon that the biggest issue for entrepreneurship is probably the access to funding. How prevalent was that with regards to the survey? How did you find that?
That features, although not right at the top. Interestingly, access to funding is not the primary reason for not starting a business. Yes, I acknowledge there's a lot of absence of seed funding in South Africa, but some of the more pertinent sort of reasons given for not starting are fear of failure, and those negative perceptions about navigating this entrepreneurial process and not succeeding.
How do we eliminate that then, that perception, that thought?
I think there's some real fears, and I think they're borne out in the marketplace insofar as we don't have a very friendly environment sometimes insofar as failure is concerned. But I think a lot has to do with capabilities and self-belief, and how one perceives risk and how one actually navigates that risk is just as important as the real risk.
I mean, if you look at something, for instance, this week we saw the airline Skywise go down. If you're starting up a business, for instance, if you were starting it up in the airline industry, you'd be shocked out of your wits right now, saying to yourself, can I actually, enter that industry? How do you go into that industry and say, well, I'm going to pave a new way? How do you find something, that'll turn the industry around almost? And
I think this is the sort of fundamental thing entrepreneurs bring to the marketplace, is that they're able to come up with business models to basically see where the gaps are, to take opportunity and exploit these opportunities in different ways, in novel ways. Without innovation, there is no entrepreneurship. So perhaps someone will come up with an innovative business model to sort of counter these tendencies in this industry.
Coming from a business school yourself, what is being taught? What is it that needs to also, the message that needs to be brought out when going to a business school?
So yes, we are very circumspect in terms of what we teach. We realize that hero stories and case studies can only take you that far. So we're very engaged in research, scientific research, to try and teach individuals things that work, that have predictive value, so that they can actually manipulate these variables and actually have an impact on their bottom line.
Is government aiding the process, however, of becoming an entrepreneur in South Africa?
I think government is trying to create an enabling environment. Whether they're successful in doing that is open to debate. But I think a lot of the time they need to just pave the way and then get out of the way instead of interfering.
How else do they help then? How else do they not just get in the way?
I think there's so many conflicting policies, labor issues in terms of small businesses not wanting to pay, exorbitant wages, having to deal with Labour Relations Act, having to deal with onerous tax regulations. So I think that there needs to be some sort of serious thought and holistic way of actually dealing with all these different types of red tapes.
Professor Boris Urban, thank you so much for the time. Entrepreneurship, a big deal in South Africa with unemployment rate sitting at 25%. Professor Boris Urban from the WITS Business School.